The knock came just as the last lantern in the cabin guttered low, a thin pulse of flame fighting the winter wind. Thomas Calder froze mid-step, his hands still dusted with flour from the biscuits he'd failed to finish. No one should have been traveling on a night like this, Christmas Eve or not. Snow clawed at the shutters, rattling them like a restless spirit. The knock came again, weak but stubborn. He unlatched the door. A woman stood on the threshold wrapped in a coat hardly fit for autumn, let alone the deadly Montana cold. Snow clung to her hair, wet curls plastered to her cheeks. She held a tiny carpetbag, its leather cracked like old parchment. For a long moment, neither spoke, only the storm breathed between them. "Mr. Calder," she managed, voice shivering as much as her frame. Thomas nodded slowly. "You must be Clara Prescott." The words tasted strange. He'd sent the letter months ago, more out of desperation than hope. A widower raising an 8-year-old girl on a failing ranch didn't have the luxury of pride. Still, he hadn't expected her to actually come. And certainly not looking as though she'd walked through hell to get here. Behind him, his daughter Emma peered around the doorframe, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Clara's gaze softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to arrive this late. The stagecoach driver refused to take me further. I walked the last mile." "In this storm?" he asked. There wasn't another option. Thomas studied her, the brittle clothes, the bruised knuckles, the quiet determination tightening her jaw. The agency had described her as hard-working, modest, of good temperament. They hadn't said anything about the kind of grit it took to brave a blizzard for a stranger. He stepped aside. "Get in here before the cold finishes what the trail started." She entered, shoulders slumping with relief as warmth wrapped around her. But even as she moved closer to the fire, something in her eyes remained guarded, like she expected to be turned back any second. Thomas felt it too, the uneasy truth that he'd summoned a stranger to rebuild the family he'd lost. Before he could speak, a sharp crack sounded outside, a sound swallowed by wind but unmistakable. A rifle shot, the three of them went still. And the storm, as if sensing the shift, howled harder. Thomas snatched the lantern from the table and stepped toward the window, lifting the flame just enough to peer through the frostbitten glass. Darkness sprawled across the yard, thick as wet tar. Only shifting snow betrayed movement. Clara's voice trembled. "Is someone out there?" "Maybe," he muttered. "Maybe not someone I want near my home." She swallowed, fingers tightening around the carpetbag she refused to put down. Emma clung to Clara's skirt without thinking, a small act that startled them both. Another crack split the night, not a gunshot this time but something breaking, wood giving way, heavy and fast. Thomas cursed under his breath. The barn door. He grabbed his coat. Clara stepped forward. "You can't go out there alone." Barlow tipped his hat. "We'll camp in your barn tonight. Storm's too heavy to ride back." Thomas agreed, though his focus never left Clara. Later, once the lawmen settled and the danger bled into memory instead of threat, Thomas led Clara and Emma inside. He stoked the fire, its glow reflecting in their tired eyes. Clara set her bag down, truly down, for the first time. Emma crawled into her lap without hesitation. Thomas watched them, warmth softening the rugged edges of the moment. "Clara," he said quietly. "If you choose to stay, it won't be out of obligation, but because you see a life here." She looked around the small, imperfect cabin, the fire crackling, Emma smiling up at her, snow drifting peacefully outside. "I do see one," she whispered. "I'd like to build it." Thomas exhaled, a slow unburdening. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. The leader lifted his rifle slightly. "Step aside, Calder." Thomas stepped forward instead. And the man cocked the hammer, the rifle's click cracked the air like brittle ice, yet Thomas held his ground. Clara stood behind him, her breath trembling against the back of his coat. For a single frozen heartbeat, no one moved, the storm itself seemed to hold still. Then Clara spoke. "Thomas, let me talk to them." He turned just enough to see her face. Not fear, resolve. Something long buried rising to the surface. "You know these men," he said quietly. "I know what they did," she whispered. "They took in girls with promises of work, then sold them to the highest bidder. I escaped. The sheriff believes me, but he can't protect everyone. They're hunting me because I'm proof." The truth hit him like a kick to the ribs. The leader laughed. "Sweetheart, you tell tall tales. We just want you back home where you belong." Clara stepped forward despite Thomas's attempt to stop her. "I belong nowhere near you." The men stiffened. The storm pushed between them, swirling white. Thomas lowered his voice. "Clara, if you go to them, you won't come back." "I know," she murmured. "But I won't have Emma see you die in her name." The words carved him open. He reached for her arm, gentle but unyielding. "You're part of this household now. We don't abandon our own." Something in her face broke, not weakness, but a dam finally cracking after too many winters. She pressed the carpetbag to her chest. Snow gathered in her lashes. Inside the barn, the horses shifted nervously, hooves scraping wooden floors, even they sensed the danger. Thomas drew Clara closer, voice barely a whisper. "Listen to me. I don't care what past you carry to my doorstep. You came here with nothing, but you came with courage. That's worth standing for." Her breath hitched. Slowly, her fingers loosened from the bag's handle, letting his steadiness anchor her. Behind them, the gang leader barked, "Enough talk. Last chance, hand her over." Clara looked at Thomas, a single tear carving a warm line down her cold cheek. "Whatever happens," she said, "don't let them take me alive." Thomas turned back to the men. His jaw clenched. His stance widened. His voice burned through the storm, "You'll take her over my dead body." The leader raised his rifle. And from far off, a horn sounded through the snow. The horn's echo rolled over the valley like thunder buried in snowfall. The gang turned, startled. The leader spat a curse. "Sheriff." Within seconds, silhouettes emerged over the ridge, lawmen pushing through the storm, rifles ready. Lanterns swung from saddles, their beams slicing through the dark like golden blades. The leader snarled. "Spread out." But it was too late. Sheriff Barlow's voice boomed across the drifts. "Drop your guns. You're surrounded." Panic fractured the gang like glass. One bolted toward the creek, another fired blindly toward the cabin. Thomas grabbed Clara, pulling her behind the broken barn door as bullets hissed through the snow-heavy air. Barlow's men returned fire with ruthless precision. The first outlaw dropped, gun skidding across the ice. The second tried to flank the barn but was tackled off his feet by two deputies who dragged him into the snow. The leader, the one who'd threatened Clara with the cold confidence of a man who thought the world belonged to him, turned his rifle toward Thomas and Clara. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted. "She was ours." Thomas stepped in front of Clara. "You're finished," he said. Barlow tipped his hat. "We'll camp in your barn tonight. Storm's too heavy to ride back." Thomas agreed, though his focus never left Clara. Later, once the lawmen settled and the danger bled into memory instead of threat, Thomas led Clara and Emma inside. He stoked the fire, its glow reflecting in their tired eyes. Clara set her bag down, truly down, for the first time. Emma crawled into her lap without hesitation. Thomas watched them, warmth softening the rugged edges of the moment. "Clara," he said quietly. "If you choose to stay, it won't be out of obligation, but because you see a life here." She looked around the small, imperfect cabin, the fire crackling, Emma smiling up at her, snow drifting peacefully outside. "I do see one," she whispered. "I'd like to build it." Thomas exhaled, a slow unburdening. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Years later, Clara would remember that night, the blizzard, the gunfire, the terror, but above all, the moment Hope stepped across a threshold and asked for a place to belong. The final shot, a cabin glowing under a quiet Christmas snowfall, 3 shadows inside forming the shape of a family at last.